Saint Augustine commentary on the Gospel of John, chapter 9 following. Therefore, the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, till they called the parents of him that received his sight. That is, who had been blind and had come to the possession of sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we know not. Or who has opened his eyes, we know not. And they said, Ask himself, he is of age. Let him speak of himself. He is indeed our son, and we might justly be compelled to answer for him as an infant, because then he could not speak for himself. From of old he has had power of speech, only now he sees. We have been acquainted with him as blind from his birth. We know him as having speech from of old, only now do we see him endowed with sight. Ask himself that you may be instructed. Why seek to calumniate us? These words spoke his parents, because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had conspired already, that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. It was no longer a bad thing to be put out of the synagogue. They cast out, but Christ received. Therefore, said his parents, he is of age, ask himself. Then again called they the man who had been blind, and said unto him, Give God the glory. What is that? Give God the glory? Deny what you have received. Such conduct is manifestly not to give God the glory, but rather to blaspheme him. Give God, they say, the glory. We know that this man is a sinner. Then said he, If he is a sinner, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. Then said they to him, What did he do? What did he to you? How opened he your eyes? And he, indignant now at the hardness of the Jews, and as one brought from a state of blindness to sight, unable to endure the blind, answered them, I have told you already, and you have heard. Wherefore would you hear it again? Will you also become his disciples? What means will you also? With that I am one already. Will you also be so? Now I see, but see not askance. They cursed him and said, You are his disciple. Such a malediction be upon us and upon our children. For a malediction it is that you lay open their heart, not if you ponder the words, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. Would you had known that God spoke to Moses? You would have also known that God preached by Moses. For you have the Lord saying, Had you believed Moses, you would have also believed me, for he wrote of me. Is it thus you follow the servant, and turn your back against the Lord? But not even the servant do you follow, for by him you would be guided to the Lord. The man answered and said unto them, Herein is a marvelous thing, that you know not from whence he is, and yet he has opened my eyes. Now we know that God hears not sinners, But if any man is a worshipper of God and does his will, him he hears. He speaks still as one only anointed. For God hears even sinners. For if God heard not sinners, in vain would the publican, casting his eyes on the ground and smiting on his breast, have said, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. And that confession merited justification, as this blind man enlightenment. Since the world began was not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind. If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. With frankness, constancy, and truthfulness he spoke. For these things that were done by the Lord, by whom were they done but by God? Or, when would such things be done by disciples, were not the Lord dwelling in them? They answered and said unto him, You were wholly born in sins. What means this wholly? Even to blindness of the eyes. But he who has opened his eyes also saves him wholly. He will grant a resurrection at his right hand, who gave enlightenment to his countenance. You were altogether born in sins, and do you teach us? And they cast him out. They had made him their master. Many questions had they asked for their own instruction, and they ungratefully cast forth their teacher. But as I have already said before, brethren, when they expel, the Lord receives, for the rather that he was expelled was he made a Christian. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said unto him, Do you believe on the Son of God? Now he washes the face of his heart. He answered and said, As one still only anointed, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? And Jesus said unto him, You have both seen him, and it is he that talks with you. The one is he that is sent, the other is one washing his face in Siloam, which is interpreted sent. And now at last, with the face of his heart washed, and a conscience purified, acknowledging him not only as the Son of Man, which you had believed before, but now as the Son of God, who had assumed our flesh, he said, Lord, I believe. It is but little to say, I believe. Would you also see what he believes him? He fell down and worshipped him. And Jesus said to him, Now is he the day discerning between the light and the darkness. For judgment am I come into this world, that they who see not might see, and they who see might be made blind. What is this, Lord? A weighty subject of inquiry have you laid on the weary, but revive our strength that we may be able to understand what you have said. You are come that they who see not may see. Rightly so, for you are the light. Rightly so, for you are the day. Rightly so, for you deliver from darkness. This every soul accepts, every one understands. What is this that follows? And those who see may be made blind? Shall then, because you are come, those be made blind who saw? Hear what follows, and perhaps you will understand. By these words then were some of the Pharisees disturbed, and said unto him, Are we blind also? Hear now what it is that moves them. And they who see may be made blind. Jesus said unto them, If you were blind, you should have no sin. while blindness itself is sin. If you were blind, that is, if you considered yourselves blind, if you called yourselves blind, you also would have recourse to the physician. If then in this way you were blind, you should have no sin. For I am come to take away sin. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remains. Wherefore, because by saying we see, you seek not the physician, you remain in your blindness. This then is that which a little above we did not understand, when he said, I am come that they who see not may see. For what means this, that they who see not may see? They who acknowledge that they do not see and seek the physician, that they may receive sight, and they who see may be made blind. What means this? They who see may be made blind, that they who think they see and seek not the physician may abide in their blindness. Such discerning therefore of one from another he called judgment, when he said, For judgment I am come into this world, whereby he distinguishes the cause of those who believe and make confession from the proud, who think they see and are therefore the more grievously blinded. Just as the sinner, making confession and seeking the physician, said to him, Judge me, O God, and discern my cause against the unholy nation. Psalm 63, verse 1. Namely, those who say, we see, and their sin remains. But it was not that judgment he now brought into the world, whereby in the end of the world he shall judge the living and the dead. For in respect to this he had said, I judge no man. Chapter 8, verse 15. Seeing that he came the first time, not to judge the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Chapter 3, verse 17.